So, welcome to Northern Powerhouses, our business success stories series of interviews, where we discuss with local business leaders, their backgrounds, their successes and challenges, and what's really driving them forwards. And this afternoon, I'm delighted to have with us Ryan Shaw, who's director at Relative Connections. So, firstly, Ryan, thank you for spending a bit of time with us. If you'd like
No,
to introduce yourself, Relative Connections, what you do, and how you help people, that would be wonderful.
no problems. Thanks for having me, firstly.
Very welcome.
So my name's Ryan, and I've been a director of Relative Connections since we started the business back in 2009. We specialise in finding lost friends and family members for the public, and but we also for other businesses we trace ex-tenants, landlords. We can also do beneficiary tracing and things like that. We work for quite a lot of solicitors, but at least 80% of our business is for the public who are looking for those lost friends and family members. We do a lot of birth relative searches as well for people where the separation has been caused by adoption. That's
Right.
a Ofsted registered business that I operate as well. But all our leads come in through Relative Connections, and yeah, we work for people looking for the fathers when they don't know them, often don't even have a name. So we use DNA to do those
Wow.
searches, and old friends, first loves, things like that. So one of the stories we've got at the moment, one of the searches is for a guy in his 90s who's looking for a girl he's not seen since they were both 9 years old. So
And
we get, it's some incredible stories, and every search we do is different. That's what makes it so
yes.
unique. But that also keeps us grounded because for what we say is for each person that we work for, that's the most important search we'll ever do
Yes.
because this trust that they place in us, they tell us things that they might never have told anybody, and we're very mindful of that. And the
Yeah.
team, I'm so proud of the people that I work with, the experience, the passion, enthusiasm, commitment that they've got to that finding of the
Yeah.
person. It's brilliant. And recently, I've gone back into the trace department and actually worked in it. They've been calling me undercover boss, not that I'm particularly undercover, but it's been nice to go back in and just reevaluate how we do it and why
Yeah.
we do it, and look at it from that researcher perspective. So I've been speaking to researchers in Australia, in Northern Ireland, Southern Ireland, Scotland, Canada, just trying to get answers for people, trying to complete their jigsaw, so to speak. So yeah, that's who I am, and that's what I do.
I mean, absolutely incredible. It must be, especially when we talk about sort of family, friends, first loves and stuff, must be incredibly rewarding vocation, I guess.
It's it's one of those great. There's great responsibility with it as well, So
Yes.
for every positive outcome, there are hopefully still positive, but less so. For
Yes.
every, some families they do end up going to Disney World together. They do. Some friends do reconnect and get married, and we've had relative connections, weddings, and things like that.
Right.
But more than anything, I think for some people, just getting some answers,
Yeah.
some understanding of, especially on the family stuff.
Yeah.
Who am I? And where are they? Where are
Yes.
they, and what are they doing? So it's just incredibly important to try and protect everybody through that process, including ourselves. So
Yeah.
what we include an intermediary now on every search that we do, which not every trace company does that. And there's not much regulation around trace agencies in the
Right.
UK. In my opinion, there's not enough. So as soon as you mention the word adoption, I've had to form a small separate company to do that adoption work. It's had to become Ofsted registered. We've had
Right.
Ofsted come to our office
Yeah.
and mark us as good, which we were really pleased with that.
Yes.
I've got a registered manager, and we have to go through all these steps to protect the person who was adopted if they're looking for the birth parents or the birth parent. So everyone has to be protected, and it's all
Yes.
governed by adoption law and by Ofsted. On the other side of my business, in relative connections, there's none of that available. So for somebody who's looking for their father, if adoption's involved, there's all this safety net around them.
Yeah.
And if it's not, then there's nothing. So what I've done is I've tried to ensure that the level that we work to around the Ofsted business, we work to. So I go, and it's difficult because that means we charge more money because we do a different type of work to the
Yes.
other trace agencies. But you can still go to a tracing agency in the UK and say, "Can you find my dad?" And they'll say, "Yeah," and they'll provide you with his address in a report. To me, that is fundamentally wrong because
Right.
you're going to go knock on his door. He might be married. He might have two other kids. He might not have told his wife that you exist. Now, rightly or wrongly, isn't for me to judge. But
Yep.
what I can say is that approach is wrong.
Yep.
It's wrong for you and it's wrong for him. And
Yep.
it's wrong for your family and it's wrong for his family. So what we do is we include an intermediary on every search. And that means that we can protect the experience of our client, but also of our subject.
Yes.
And to me, that's really important. And it also protects my business and my team.
Yep.
So we're dealing with that emotional response. And actually there's quite a lot of emotion around what we do. We've had people who are upset because we found who they're looking for, but they're angry because we did it too quickly, or they're angry because we didn't do it quickly enough. But they're not angry, they're just emotional. It's just
Yes.
that emotion coming out. So we
Yes.
have to be really mindful of that, and we have to protect and safeguarding is a big thing within the business,
Yes.
which isn't an individual point in time. I always say safeguarding is like a constant evaluation, constantly looking for any issues or problems that people might have, and just ensuring that the team are experienced enough in life and in their own lives, but also have the right support and right training to be able
Yes.
to support people through this process, and also that my team has access to timeouts and reflective practice and things like that to
Yep.
just kind of dial down. So one of the things that we do now, we don't work between Christmas and New Year because how can you run a business that's all about family and then tell people they've got to work
Yes.
over Christmas and not see the family? So it's just after years of doing it, there's been this, like any business, that evolution
Yep.
of a business from where you start to and where you end, who knows? But as I go through this journey, I've definitely, that's one thing that's really kind of happened is looking at protecting everybody and looking after everybody, including the people that work here. So
Wonderful. Wonderful. And looking back, you said you're obviously looking backwards a little bit, but can you tell us a little bit more about your background, how you got into business, and why this particular one?
well, I worked for this is one of them stories that even a few years ago I wouldn't have dared mention the company that I did work for, but I will do because they're a great company. So in Leeds is a debt collection agency called First Locate. So I'd left school and I'd had like loads of jobs, but I'd tried to work in a bank, but I couldn't balance the till. I'd worked in a warehouse. It were all like remedial jobs, I suppose. There were nothing um, particularly interesting. And then I went in my early 20s to work for a company called First Locate, and I were doing their trace work for them
Right.
with other people. And I developed the role, and I kind of started to call myself the trace manager. And the directors were more focused on the big contracts on the debt recovery side of their business. But I love finding people.
Yes.
Um, but I built a little team out for myself, and I really enjoyed it. Anyway, I fell out with the guy that owned it. He brought someone into the business, and I were a bit offended that they brought in a higher level and all this, just as you do when you're in your 20s and you think you know best. So I left there and I went to work for Citigroup, and I was doing debt collection on their subprime loans, and
Right.
then basically, I didn't like that, to be honest. I didn't enjoy that. But I left there when they made me redundant after about 6 months because they actually left the market completely. It was
Right.
around the Northern Rock stuff and all that.
Yes, of course.
So I found myself I just got my first house. I'd had it about 6 weeks and I didn't have a job. Um, so I ended up just going into the building game, which I think a lot of people like me do. Not
Right.
much of an education, I've got some GCSEs, but nothing else. And I did that until I was 30. Um, but I always had this idea to set up my own tracing company
Brilliant.
and never really got around to it. And then kind of reviewed my life a little bit at around 30-year-old, and I hadn't really made much of myself, in truth. Wanted more for myself and for me now wife, and so I just decided to start the business, and I managed to get £500, and my business partner John got £500, and we give it a go, and
Brilliant.
here we are now, like 15 years later, still giving it a go, I suppose.
Wonderful. Wonderful. What a great, I mean, obviously a great story. And then just kick on. And you probably, you may know the statistics about um company success and failures, but they're quite unfortunately challenging. It's so 80% of businesses fail in the first 5 years of operation, and of the 20% that survive, another 80% of those fail in the following 5 years.
Yeah.
So getting past 10 years is really, really significant in terms of success. So that's brilliant. And as you've grown since then, to you and John with the 500 quid each and building to here, what are some of the biggest challenges and issues you've had to overcome, Ryan?
There's just so many. I mean, I think the story of Nike, that Phil Knight book, if
Yes.
Shoe Dog,
Yeah.
anyone who owns a business should read that book, because they had the bank account closed, they had so many, but we've had problems almost as grand as that over the years.
Yeah.
Losing access to systems, losing good people, and I think if I could go back, I wouldn't really change very much, because I do try and learn from. Have to make them. You just got to try and make sure they're not fatal. And sometimes we have
Yes.
come really close to the win, even in the last couple of years. It's not
Yep.
always been plain sailing by any stretch, and I won't pretend otherwise. But if I were going to give anyone advice, it's make sure you go away. I could have got much better advice much sooner. Like, I picked wrong accountants, I picked wrong employees, I picked wrong strategies. But it's all part of learning, I
Yep.
suppose. And if I were to go back, I'd maybe look at doing some kind of business degree, or at least some kind of business course, just to get that fundamental understanding, especially in numbers. You
Yes.
know,
Yeah.
you've got to really understand numbers, and I think I'm smart, but I'm not educated. So I've relied on being smart. I've relied on common sense, and relied on getting advice from different organisations, but probably didn't go deeply enough into some
Yeah.
areas of it. And I would say finance, tax, things like that are where
Yeah.
I've probably made mistakes.
And
So
we always say that most businesses are started by people that are good at what they do. They're not necessarily good at running a business. What you do, because we're not taught a lot of this in whether it's school or not, and it's But I mean, I think Richard Branson's quite famously known to be numerically dyslexic himself, and
yeah,
so it didn't hold him back. So it's but you're right in saying, I think just so basic, even just basic and more developing education across the board in business always makes sense,
yeah,
because we
absolutely.
we can learn from learn from others, learn from information that exists. And what would you say the biggest learnings about business? Obviously, getting advice, but what are some of the things that you've learned as you've hit success? What are some of the things that have really changed for you?
Well, fundamentally, you can't do what you love to do. You have to love running a business. So
Yes.
I've traced people, like I said, over the last few weeks. I've done more trace work than I have in the last few months. That's because someone left, and the new person who was starting, there was some like downtime, and the team needed a tracer to go
Yep.
in, a research to go in and do the work, and there were only me really available to do it. So roll my sleeves up and get back into it, and I've enjoyed it. We're a
Yep.
bit rough around edges to begin with, but you soon kind of pick up those old skills. But actually, within, I'd say, 2 years of starting, I'd stopped doing any trace work. I
Right.
were running a business. You got to have so many different strengths to try
Yes.
and get that success. From sales, marketing, and then trying to spot talent. That's incredibly difficult. Trying to motivate people, trying to inspire your team.
Yep.
It takes a lot of work. But I think I were quite lucky that my mind worked in that way. I were comfortable
Yes.
with all of that. Whereas John, he wasn't really. So he still has much more of an operational
Yep.
involvement in the business than what I do now. But I think it's worked in our
Yeah.
in our But the other thing, I wouldn't. I've given shares away in past as well, and incentivized people. I wouldn't do that. I think you're better if you own it all, then you can, because if the responsibility is all yours,
Yes.
then I think the ownership should be all yours, and that's a mistake I've made in the past. But at the same time, it's everyone should share the success.
Yes.
Like, I don't try and talk about staff. These people who work here, they're not staff. They're incredible people doing an amazing job. My job is to just try and guide them and inspire them
Yeah.
and look after them, and try and give them a work-life balance, which is in small business, it's difficult. You're always going to give people more work than they can do, really, because
Yeah.
if you're not, then you're quiet. If you're quiet,
Yeah.
then you're not payroll. So there's all this stuff going on. And I just think the tax system in this country is unnecessarily complicated. And I've been caught out by it so many times. I still don't understand dividends fully. I still don't understand why I pay so much tax out of the business for so little back.
Yeah.
I could really go off on a tangent about that, but I'll just leave it there because I will get on my soapbox. But I feel like I should be entitled to understand a bit more about where my company's money goes. When at
Yeah.
least, I remember when I started, someone said put 50% of any money that you make away for tax. I went 50%, but once you cover PAYE, VAT, corporation tax, and then you tax on your own salary or dividends, you're up at that number. And to
Yeah.
me, that it stops me employing more people.
Right.
Uh, that's the thing. Like, it stops me growing my business. This business could be 10 times bigger, but I never have and I've got to be careful. It's my responsibility. So if I've not been able to do it, that sits with me. It's not the government's fault. But I do look at some of these amounts of money that go out of the business, more than payroll
Yeah.
in every month. And you just like, that's something that as quite a simple person, I don't really understand. And I
Yeah.
just feel like it's completely, or in the most part, it's wasted.
Yeah.
And, if I paid all that tax and I lived in some kind of utopia, then fair enough. But it don't feel like that. So yeah, that's a bit of a burden sometimes.
It is an issue because if over taxation kills entrepreneurship, is like what's the point? If you're going to get
Yeah,
taxed excessively, then people like you and I probably would go, well, why not just work for somebody else? Because
yeah.
because as you say, the responsibility is a burden. It's not an easy thing to own and run a business.
I,
Um,
sus- I suspect when you talk about that level of failure within the first 5 years, actually, like, failure is probably not the right word, because a lot of people are probably just making that realization and thinking, I might as well go back to working for someone else and let them have those problems and not me,
yeah,
because it's incredibly stressful. The only thing that I kind of burnt the boats when I started this business. There were no way back because I didn't have any skill set to go
yeah,
back. So I'm quite a good plasterer, but that's hard work. I'm 46 now. I don't want to be plastering walls anymore. But apart from that, and filling skips and digging holes and stuff like that, there weren't really much for me to go back to. So that's, I think, why I've stayed on this journey.
brilliant.
Um, if someone's had a degree already and had already had some level of success, I could see why that they'd, maybe choose to move back into like paid employment
Yeah,
and not carry the stress. That's if I were giving advice out, that would be another thing. Manage your stress.
yes,
Last year I got wobbly with it all. It got too much. And what I found, was going back to the gym and starting running again, that really benefited me, and
brilliant.
I really wouldn't ever stop doing those things, because about a year ago we're in quite a dark place with everything, really struggling to cope with it all. And
Right.
no one wants to feel like that, and I won't wish it on my worst enemy.
Yeah.
And it was a decision while we were away on holiday, actually. So still having nice experiences, but not really enjoying them, not being present with my family, and just been like a bit like a rabbit in headlights, and
Yes.
just spoke to my wife and just said, this can't really go on. It's not sustainable.
Yeah.
So I was like, right, get me running shoes on, get Leeds half marathon booked in. I'm
Brilliant.
doing 3 weeks. Lost a couple of stone, and it just helps me. Lifting really heavy things it's hard, but it kind of shows you that you can do hard things. I think
Yes.
part of it for me. So yeah,
Absolutely. No, it's so important to look after ourselves as well as looking after other people and the business.
yeah,
It
absolutely.
I think I like the analogy of the on a plane, if hopefully it never happens, but if you get cabin depressurization, they always say put your mask on before you
Yeah.
somebody else's, you help somebody else, and that's so I think it's really important. And Ryan, you probably aware we're a business coaching organisation. I'm keen to know who the best coaches you've worked with, whether that's business, sport, life in general. Who's had the biggest impact on you?
Um, shall I just give names? Are you all right with me
Yeah,
mentioning
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, please.
organisations? So definitely Entrepreneur Circle for me, and Nigel Bottrell in
Yeah,
particular.
yeah, yeah.
I've worked with Nige for a lot of years now at various levels of it. He owns the Entrepreneur Circle for
Yes.
anyone who doesn't know. But I've worked and had one-to-one coaching with him and been part of his mastermind groups and things like that. So I just resonated with him, his way he talks, what he says, how he says it. Just resonated with me from I think he'd only launched EC in 2010 and we went limited in 2009. So it was
Okay.
really
Yeah,
early on. So I've kind of known Nige for a few years. We've been lucky enough we went to Russia for World Cup semi-final together and things like that. So
brilliant.
yeah, always seen him as like quite an inspirational person.
Yep.
So yeah, I'd say Nigel Bottrell is kind of like the number one in that for me by quite some distance.
Brilliant, brilliant. And whether it's from Nigel or anyone else, do you find yourself using any favorite quotes or sayings in or about business and success?
Um, Not particularly. No, no, nothing's coming straight to mind. But in terms of coaching and in terms of like mentors and things, I've had mixed messages, people saying, "Oh, why do you pay for that?" And, why are you doing that? And some people that I've known who I respect a lot have said the same thing. But I find that for me it makes a huge difference. I find it to be incredibly important. Maybe because I I didn't learn enough at school or didn't get a degree. I don't know what it is, but to just have someone as a sounding board,
Yes.
I know, but not you have to understand with coaches and things like that. They're not there to run your business and they're not there to make decisions for you. And I would never I never say to Nigel, what should I do? And then just do what he says
Yep.
because at the end of the day he's dropping in and out of your business and or anyone else for that matter. If action coach or whatever you use it, and then they're not there to run your business for you
Yeah.
and they don't have all the answers, but to just have a sounding board,
Yes.
just have that person to just run ideas past. I'm thinking about doing this, I'm thinking about doing that, and getting other business owners and their experience, because we're a different breed.
Yeah.
Business owners are a
Yes.
different breed, and to be surrounded by other business owners, even if it's just a few, I think that's really important. I like, if I were just going to go back to your original question, the only thing that's kind of come to mind is that surround yourself with like-minded people, but also make sure you're not you want to sit within the 10 people you spend most time with. You want
Yep.
4 or 5 of them to be more successful and they're pulling you up,
Yep.
and 4 or 5 to be, I say less successful, but we're
Yeah.
all we're all like a top trump card, aren't we? We're all doing better
Yeah.
in some aspects of life, and I'm always quick to think like just because someone's life looks a particular way, if that's how they want it to look, then potentially they've achieved much more success than someone who's got a Range Rover and but is desperately unhappy. So you never really truly know all that. But if you can kind of pitch yourself somewhere between, a group of people where you think you can learn from some of them, but you can also help some of them, then I think that's
Brilliant.
pretty important.
No, fabulous. And Ryan, what would you say you've learned about yourself through your journey so far?
Um, I think on one hand that I'm stronger than I thought, but on the other hand, I'm not as strong as I thought. That arrogance that I carried when I was younger, I think has been replaced by, I think, a quiet confidence. But it's I don't know beyond that really. It's just a journey, and you've just got to keep pushing forward.
Yes.
Um, but I think I know now more when I'm at my best. I know what my best looks like. I know how to get the best out of myself. Like, I don't really work much past 3 o'clock. And some people would be like, "Oh, you've got to hustle, you've got to be." But I'm a morning person. I want to get up, I want to get to work, I want to get it all set up. But then I want to trust the people that I employ
Yep.
to run their sections of the business for me.
Yep.
So I don't want to be here much past 3 o'clock. I want to make sure I've got that time to go to the gym, and then I want to go home and be with my family, and look
Brilliant.
after my daughter and spend time with my wife and daughter. And so
Brilliant.
it's just, I suppose, looking for that optimal performance from myself. I think I'm a bit better at that now.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And looking forward, Ryan, what does the future look like for you guys, and what challenges do you think you might face, if any?
We've still got a few challenges going on at the moment from COVID, uh,
Right.
paying a COVID loan back, and just had a problem with cash flow in parts of last year, caused, I think problem is for business owners, you kind of become intrinsically linked to your own business. So last year I was asking myself, why is the business not performing as well as it was? And that's wearing me out. But am I worn out because the business isn't performing, or is the business not performing because I'm worn out?
Brilliant.
That to me is like, yeah, getting through that's been tricky, but I've learned more about myself, more about my business, and more about the people that I work with over the last 12 months.
Yes.
As you can tell, like, it has been, I think, where I'm speaking quite openly, it's been tricky for me.
Yeah. Appreciate
Um,
that.
Going forward, I feel like I've we've turned a corner. We're getting back in a good position. Um, but I've always said I think this business should be at least 5 times bigger than what it is, and the fact that it's not is absolutely 100% my fault. So
Right.
it's about developing myself and the business over the next few years and pushing it where it should be, which it should be known nationally. It should
Brilliant.
be it should be advertising on when long lost families on telly,
Yep.
and it doesn't have that capability because of my limitations, not
Yeah.
because of its limitations. But it's okay to say that. I don't mean I'm not being negative about myself.
Not at all.
It's taking. I think Nigel always told me, if it ain't how you want it to be, it's your fault. It's not, like if that bit when I was slagging off government, if he'd have been over my shoulder, he'd been going, but it's your fault, it's your responsibility. Everyone has to pay PAYE, everyone has to pay VAT, everyone has to pay corporation tax. So shut up and get on with it. And I think that's what you have to do. You have to just so for going forward, I've got big plans and ambitions, but it's okay as well if you don't. And like last year I didn't. If we'd have done this, I don't think I would have even agreed to do this
Yeah.
podcast a year
Yeah.
ago. I wasn't really working hard enough. I wasn't thinking deep enough. I want trying to move the business forward. I was in like a state of permanent panic.
Yeah.
But now it's about like looking for um, another guy I work with, I should probably mention, is a guy called Martin Norbury, and he said so. He said a few things. These are good, and they're directly from Martin. Definitely paraphrasing his kind of some of his business ideas. What can we stop? What can we start? What can we continue doing? That's a great one to ask yourself.
Yes.
This is one of my favourites, and we use it all the time in this business. Uh, in advance an explanation, in arrears an excuse. So if you got to speak to a client, just be honest and upfront and
Yeah.
don't guess them, and I love that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know, I went off at a tangent there, but
No, it's great. It's really interesting, the learning that you have and where you are. But yeah, I mean, we often use the phrase "life's a mirror," so the business is a mirror of the bit of the owner. So
yeah,
as you rightly say, if the business isn't performing, it's what can I do to perform myself, which will directly relate to the business. It's okay. That's a big part of it's our personality that drives us forward, our beliefs and values and energy ultimately. And I think that the growth of business is, for me, directly related to the energy of its key owners and players. And
yeah,
and so and that's what often we do start to stall, or the business stalls if we do.
yeah.
Which is a shame. And what would you say to anyone that was thinking of going to business right now, Ryan?
Well, just make sure you're prepared not to do the thing that you probably enjoy doing. You
Yes.
know, really, really think about that. If you enjoy baking cakes, it might be better to go work for someone who wants you to bake cakes than to
Yes.
start a business where you have to find someone who bakes cakes, because then you've got to find someone who bakes cakes as well as you.
Yes, which is normally quite difficult.
Yeah, and also what I found in a few local meetings I've been to recently, are people saying, "Oh, I want to grow the business, but I can't find anyone who does what I do like I do it." I said, "No, you're absolutely wrong. There's plenty of people who can do it." And that, I think that's one thing I learned early on, and that would be
Yeah,
my advice. Find someone who can, in that analogy, bake cakes better than you can. So in 2011, I brought David Oates into this business, and he is by far, I think, his best researcher in this country.
brilliant.
He's now doing all our, he's a director of the other company doing the adoption work.
Yeah,
A fantastic intermediary. He can talk to you about adoption. He knows the law, he knows Ofsted, he knows the regulations. The guy's a genius, and he is much more, immediately made the research side of the business 10 times better than
brilliant.
I were in it. And it's go find, start the business, but understand that you need to find people who can do that stuff better than you, and it'll make your life a lot easier.
Yeah, it's funny. Our founder Brad. I remember him talking about when he was going through one of the stages was business acquisition. He was acquiring quite a lot of businesses and helping them grow. And he came to the realization really quickly that the best businesses to acquire were ones where he couldn't do the work. So
Yeah,
he actually bought a lot of hairdressing business at the time because he can't cut hair, and
yeah,
therefore was never tempted to go, oh, somebody hasn't turned up for work, I'll go and do it. And it was his way of putting that barrier, that air gap between the business of the business and the growth of business, which is his job, and it's the job of a business owner.
yeah. That's totally right. It's better if you can't do that thing
Yes,
that you probably want to do, and if that's your heart's desire, don't start a business, because
no,
you won't be doing. You'll end up. The most important bit is the marketing, because if you don't get
yeah,
the marketing right, you're not going to get the sales, and if you don't get the sales, then you haven't got a business. And that's the bit where I've got it wrong in the last 12 months. We use Google Ads,
right,
so we don't have an identifiable market particularly. Like we do on our B2B side. So we
yeah,
work for a lot of landlords and a lot of solicitors. Great,
yes,
they're identifiable. We can go to that market and we can ask them if they're interested in
yeah,
a particular service. But someone who's looking for the father might not have even told the partner that they're considering using a service.
of course,
They might not know that a service even exists.
yes,
So we tend to find Google Ads is most useful to us.
yes,
And someone types in, find my father, and then potentially we appear.
yeah,
So my advice to anyone starting a business is get good at the marketing, and then make sure you have a system for getting sales. So a system for marketing. And marketing is such a
yeah,
broad stroke in it. There's so many different aspects to it, but find one thing that means you can get customers,
yeah,
and you can get, and this is quoting Nigel, rhythmic acquisition of customers, because if you've got that, then you'll be all right.
yeah,
And last year I had the best team in the world for finding people, but not quite enough work for them to
yes,
do. And that's a terrible position, because that puts them under undue stress and pressure. So I'm really focused now on marketing the business, knowing that the operational side, I've got a fantastic team. So
brilliant, brilliant.
yeah, that's
It's,
my
it's
advice.
the classic. I think it's Michael Gerber talks about the two key parts of business are get customers and keep them. Find
Yeah,
find and bring them on board and then deliver the service. And it's that balance between those two that's so hard because, as you say, you can have too many clients. We can't service them. Not enough. We start to run out of cash and run out of profit, which is just a perennial challenge for anyone in business.
yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And if you started again, is there anything significant? I think you probably said there wasn't, but is there anything significant you do differently?
I just get an handle on the financial numbers
Yes.
sooner, and I'd have worked harder to. I probably had the best accountant when I started, and I should probably have stuck with him because he were a friend, but he
Yeah.
were a very good accountant. And I got, you know, I ended up moving around and ended up with paying like the worst accountant for me, not the worst accountant if he's listening, but the worst accountant for me, I paid the most money to.
Right.
And I paid like significant money, but he didn't know me and he didn't know the business.
Yeah.
He knew how to make money though, and fair enough, but completely the wrong
Right.
accountant. So I'd get a good accountant, make sure you've got all the tax software, and I'd have done that sooner. But apart from that, no, I think it's easy to look back on your life in any aspect of it, not just business owners, and say coulda, woulda, shoulda, what you could have done different. But we are where we are. We're at the exact point where our experience meets our decisions.
Absolutely. It's we're
So,
here because of all the decisions we made, actions have taken, and if we'd have done things differently, maybe we wouldn't be here. So
yeah, you never know.
I think it's always worth thinking about that. And finally, what's the best advice you'd give an 18-year-old you if you could go back in time and do so, Ryan?
What, to myself?
Yes.
Don't stop running, fat lad. Keep
Those
running.
are fantastic, fantastic. Because the Leeds Marathon's fairly soon, I think you said. Is it May? Is it May time?
Yeah, it's 12th of May. I'm only doing the half. I'm not doing the full marathon. And God bless people that can run 26.2 miles, because that, I mean, my longest run so far in preparation for this half has been 10 miles. And to think you'd have to do that again and another 6.2, I
Yeah,
think fair enough,
yeah.
my wife's done two, and done like great times. But no, I don't know if I've got a marathon in me. But I definitely think I'm going to get this Leeds half sorted out
Good
on
luck.
12th of May. So yeah.
Well, good luck with that, and thank you so much for your time today. So, and for anyone that'd like to get in touch with you or the business, what would be the best way to do so?
Just go to the website relativeconnections.co.uk. All our contact details are on there, including an email address. If you've got any questions, if you need any advice, then feel free to get in touch with us.
Brilliant. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for your time today. It's been really fascinating, and clearly, what you're doing is something really important for many people. So we wish you the best of luck with the growth plans that you have.
Thank you.
Thanks.